Wondering what's ahead for Australia in the next 3 months? The Cancer Ingress chart offers powerful insights into the weather, the politics, the economy, and so much more. I'm Kim Fairminer, astrologer and writer, and in this video I'm joined by my friend Sam from Three Fates Apothecary to unpack the key astrological signatures shaping Australia in Q3 2025. Let's take a look at what the stars have to say. Okay, so we're getting into it. Sam, you're talking about the pre-ingress lunation as the mood that we carry in and how we perceive the ingress. Tell us a little
Yeah.
more.
So the pre-ingress syzygy was used to prepare and condition the chart of the ingress. So it offers insight into the mood of the populace, natural events, and social political tensions. So it's basically a chart that is kind of like a vibe check for
Mm.
the for the ingress, right? So you know, if you're looking at the ingress and the ingress looks amazing and you're thinking, how can this be? Because there's so much, going on. If you look at the pre-ingress syzygy to see, that could be like informing how to read the ingress
Yeah.
chart.
No, I think that's reasonable. And I think that worked really well when we did it for the Aries ingress, which of course had a cardinal sign rising. And that's why we've had to come back, just 1 quarter later and look at the Cancer ingress. Did you want to share your pre-ingress
Yep.
syzygy?
I'll just do a little reading. Abu Mashar, in his The Great Introduction to the Science of the Judgment of the Stars, Book 6, says the first thing to be done is to observe the conjunction or opposition preceding the sun's ingress, for it disposes the state of the heavens, which then receives the ingress. I'm just going to focus on the main players, and because the moon is always important, of course. And then I'm basically just going to concentrate on the angles and the rulers. We've got Saturn here ruling the ascendant in the fourth house with Neptune. So I actually feel that, and it's actually also Saturn Neptune is squaring the ascendant descendant. In the fourth house in mundane matters has to do with real estate, agriculture, weather. So I actually really feel like Saturn's in its fall. So I really feel like this is actually talking about one, the looming overall housing crisis again that's
Yeah.
going on. This was repeated in the last, ingress chart. And also all of the weather events we've been having.
Yeah, well, we've had there's a drought in southern Australia, and then, on the east coast, we seem to get, dumpings of, torrential rain and flash flooding, pretty regularly these days. And that sort of talks about that, extreme dryness of Saturn, and then that
Mm.
perhaps destructive, action of Neptune through Aries, the
Yeah, so it
speed of the
feels,
water. Mm.
yeah, and it's interesting because those two planets are very different in nature, aren't
Also
they?
destructive.
Yeah,
They're
very destructive. They're malefic. So that's part of what we're coming into this ingress with, like that is a big topic that it's informing what's going on there. So we have got the Lord. Okay, so I'll go straight to the moon here. So that's pretty self-explanatory. That is definitely harming the people, the weather events, the housing stuff. That Saturn is also ruling over the second house. It's affecting agriculture. I would say there's problems with crops, crop failures,
I
crop
was just
loss.
thinking that regarding there's a disease affecting tomato production, And also there's a beetle that's eating its way through Perth at the moment. That kind of idea of like viral pestilence, I think, is a bit
Mm,
Neptune, Saturn down there in that earthy fourth house location. Um,
definitely,
yeah, it's the
definitely.
sickness of the land.
Yeah, so Saturn, Neptune, like traditionally, even though Neptune wasn't a medieval planet that was considered, is in the fourth house, is kind of associated with drought and plague. So,
Mm.
yeah, so I mean,
And that's plague,
they're
not
pretty
as in
scary
like
words.
not the Renaissance plague spread by
Yeah,
rats. That's just like
no,
plague of like mice or like
or
locusts.
beetles.
Yeah, biblical
Yeah,
style plagues.
and it doesn't have to be also as extreme, like
No,
these are
that's true.
just words, right? But yeah, it is affecting that axis, so it is definitely something in this quarter that we have to consider is what's going on. Okay, so we have the moon in the 12th house. Moon is also at the bendings, which is square the south node and the north node. And it's in the
Yeah.
12th house, so it's not doing well at all. The bendings were considered really unstable places. They weren't in the traditional texts. They didn't really consider or have a word for the bendings, but they definitely considered conjunctions to South Node and aspects, and so that would also be a square. It's slow, the moon. So it is kind of showing that, and the moon is the common people. Okay, so the moon in the 12th is showing people could be feeling affected, and also in the sign of Sagittarius, people are being affected by religion, law, or foreign affairs. Um,
Ah.
that, yeah, so and also a feeling like, I guess, let me just, sorry, I'm kind of, you might have
You're
to,
right. I think I'm picking up the direction, like really kind of like belief driven rather than, kind of like the Gemini end of that axis would be like fact
yeah.
driven. It's like, well, this is what I believe. This is what I'm, passionate about. All that Jupiter rules Sagittarian fiery enthusiasm, like, yeah, just kind of
Mm.
rushing it in centaur style. Um,
And I think it's also about institutions. So it could be about foreign policy with the Jupiter being the ruler of this syzygy. It could, because Jupiter is still in the sixth house, it hasn't yet completely moved into the seventh house there. It could be about health matters because the 12th and the 6th do very strongly talk about institutions, things that are hidden, even spiritual unwellness. Um,
mm,
so at the bendings, I would say because the nodes and eclipses have great effects on the mind and the spiritual, and it's a very spiritual axis, um, that would, I would say this is the people in general feeling worried, and not
yeah.
knowing what is going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. And I think it does have to do with that Jupiter, which is in the sign of Cancer. It's on the seventh house cusp with Mercury. Mercury is very much about trade. So that could be like, like the deals we're making. Like, maybe it is, are we going to war with a foreign country? Are we going to be protected by um, our allies? What is the trade going to be like? Like we have, I just don't know what's going on, like what's happening with our country, what's happening with our food, like all of that sort of stuff. So that's actually really just talking about it really kind of reminds me of the Moon Tarot card, where you know what I mean? Like there's a real
Yeah,
sense of,
yeah.
like,
Scrambling out of the water and you're on this shore going, WTF, where am I? What do I do now? Like, I
yeah,
don't
what's going
know.
to happen to us? So what I really liked though, so there was also a fixed star up here, and this is not the thing that I did like. There was some positives, believe me. So there was a fixed star joined with that south node because the south node is also a malefic, and it's Denebola. I think that's how you say it, or Denebola. So the nebula was the lion's tail, and it
Ah,
has a Saturn V. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too, just because I was actually wondering if it was like the first thing I thought about was Trump, because of
he's a,
his chart.
yeah.
Denebola is swift judgment, despair, regrets, public. Brady also says that Denebola is about being out of touch or out of sorts with the overall view of maybe your peers or the government. So I actually wonder if this is also about um, Albanese um, being really unsure about which side of the fence he's going to go on.
Yeah.
That's the bendings, and then the nebula's up here saying like, I'm expected to go with the US, but like what's the right way for me here?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and Trump's not an appealing character to many Australians. He's
Mm.
he's quite polarizing.
So
Yes,
Australia is in a difficult position.
yeah, we really are, and I think that 12th house moon just sort of shows how we don't feel like empowered to direct our fate as a people, that we're just kind of, being taken along for a ride by our international partners in many ways, perhaps.
I
Yeah.
think that, the thing that I think really saves this chart is a really positive Jupiter Mercury with the part of fortune on the seventh house cusp.
So our
Um,
trading
yeah,
relationships will support us.
yes, definitely. And it does rule over that moon, the Syzygy, so that is kind of buffering us greatly, our trade with other countries. And Mercury is all about commerce and trade as well. So he's definitely on board with the part of fortune. Um, the part of fortune is about money and goods. So
Yeah.
um, I think that the only thing that, even though it's like, and it's pretty awesome because it's very close to an angle, which shows it's very active still. We still do have that Saturn square it. So it is slowing that down, and that could just be through crop loss or, like the trade that we have, maybe what we have isn't as great.
Could be
So it's just slowed
falling,
down a bit.
yeah, commodity prices. Might be good for our partners, but not good for yeah, the mines and things that dig it all up. I thought it was interesting what you said about the spiritual sickness and the sense of kind of loss and directionless that perhaps we're all collectively feeling in a way, given the tumultuous times in which we live. I think this chart's really descriptive of what we're stepping forward into with the Ingress chart itself. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we swap screens?
No, no, I think that's that's pretty explanatory as a background. Like, like I think this is more, I really like looking at this as maybe a moon ruled chart, which is more about how we're all feeling. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we can
Given we're
move
going
on to the
into
Ingress.
moon ruled Cancer Ingress, how we're feeling like really,
Mm.
really matters in this quarter. So, change of screen, change of astrologers, software selection. Well, no, it's the same software, different layout. So this is the Cancer Ingress. So we've got Cancer here at 0 degrees 0 of Cancer, and it happens at 12:42 p.m. on Saturday, the 21st of June. So Sam and I are recording this like a couple of days later, and it's always telling, I find, like the strange things that happen around an ingress. It really kind of sets the stage, I think, much like a birthday in a way, that, that idea of what you do on your birthday is like a microcosm of the macro year. So some weird stuff has happened over the past few days internationally, and a lot of astrologers have put out some great stuff around international events. But this is the chart for Canberra. So this is about Australia. It's Libra rising, and that's nice. It's a cardinal sign, so there's still that sense of speed and pace to this chart, but it brings to the fore this desire for peace, justice, harmony, collaboration, and cooperation. Like we want we want to form relationships with other nations that contribute to our sense of civilization and social cohesion and understanding. And I think that rising sign here would provide the reassurance, perhaps, that 12th house moon in the lunation chart is kind of looking for. We want things to kind of be civilized and to follow a social script as per the Libra contract. Like we want things, there's a lot of talk about that rules-based order. Libra kind of loves the law, the rules that, keep us from, I don't know, conking our neighbors on the head with a club or something. Like it keeps us nice because in a way, and I'm thinking about that fixed star on the south node, the lion's tails, Denebula, that idea that, with the moon too at the southern bending as well, like there's that kind of like really kind of instinctive kind of reptilian brain, kind of like that fear that we've got. And it's just like, well, we're also noble creatures as humans, and I think this is kind of like what we're hoping for this quarter, and maybe we get it. So Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is nicely placed in stable Taurus. I was looking at this, and it's like 5 degrees away from the 8th house cusp of death and worry, and that shady, shadowy area of the chart that we don't really know who to trust. In mundane terms, that relates to the national debt, superannuation, like retirement savings, things like that. But, if you look at this being on the 7th house side of that cusp, this shows that the nation, as the lord of the first house, is dependent on other nations for peace. Like we're not really kind of in the driving seat here as much as, we'd like to be. Like big things are happening in the world geopolitically, to state the obvious. If we look at this as like, exiting the 7th house and more with an 8th house emphasis, there's been, it brings in, I think, more of those material aspects because, the 2nd and 8th is the money axis. And this is what we owe. We owe a lot. There's been conversations in the media and political class about the structural deficit, basically that we're not taxing the country enough, not bringing in enough taxation to pay for all the things that we're spending money on. Treasurers, talked about, thrown some little they call it, like they fly a kite on, tax reform and productivity and things. And he's been on the press club talking about that. And the changes to superannuation subsidies for the wealthy have been really big news. It's like a small change, but it is a real hot button issue. And I think that based on this placement of Venus in Taurus there, that, this is a well-to-do Venus. This person's like, if it was a person, has squirreled away a lot of money. So there are wealthy people in Australia who are perhaps like driving the national agenda in an outsized way. So I think it's interesting to watch what's going to happen there around tax, the national debt, and superannuation. So maybe some interesting ideas will be put forth in the coming quarter around that. Because yeah, this is
I
a
think that's I think that's really interesting, because I think I'm not sure if the last aspect that Venus made was to Jupiter, was it? Maybe Mercury
where's
passed
Venus?
it before then. So there's Jupiter,
Yeah,
there's
the square
Venus.
to Pluto and Jupiter. Yeah, square to
Yeah.
Pluto and sextile to Jupiter there.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be some not so nice changes to the rich's tax. Like, I wonder if they're going to get it easy. I mean, I don't really follow the news, but that to me looks like a shift of
Yeah.
maybe more. Maybe they get more. Like, it definitely doesn't feel like, I
They don't
mean,
give it up easily. And yeah, it ties in with housing though. Like a lot of superannuation has become a way of parking generational wealth. So remember the eighth house relates to inheritance too. So again, that's another sort of layer on there.
yeah, and that Saturn squaring still that Jupiter there and Saturn ruling over the fourth.
Mm, oh yeah, the in wealth through inheritance and death there. I
Yeah, that's
wonder if
interesting.
there'll be some talk about like a death or inheritance tax or something. Just to,
Especially with that Venus right right there.
yeah.
I really think this looks to me like a chart because of that Venus right there close to the eighth. You
Mm-hmm.
know, death, taxes. Um, yeah, that's needing to gather like a lot of money.
Well, they
Um,
do because the shopping list just keeps getting bigger and bigger. We want expansive social welfare programs, like good stuff to look after the people, but then there's all this external pressure to raise our, military spending as well. Very Aries on the seventh house cusp there. And look at that Mars over there tucked away in the 12th too. Like, yeah,
mm,
there's some behind the scenes deals going on there. Yeah, so that Venus is strong, and I think that will be perhaps the strongest signature of the Cancer Ingress chart because you've got the moon here in Taurus as well. The moon's really well placed. That moon's looking after the sun. It's also in a beautiful little sextile there to Jupiter. It actually connects with Mars by trine first, but there it's an Earth sign trine, so there's definitely some deals going on behind the scenes with partners, probably some spying on our enemies as well, given that relationship between the 12th house and the seventh house, sharing of intelligence data. Yeah, and then that moon like pings onto Jupiter as well.
that's a nice moon.
It is a nice moon. And I think perhaps that speaks to the positivity of our, international partnerships, which was shown in your Syzygy chart as well. So maybe we have a relationship internationally as being a good egg. Can you be a good egg on the international? Like, we talk, we engage in regular civilized discourse.
I really like, okay, so that moon's so important. It rules over the midheaven. It's, the Cancer Ingress. It is also ruling over that Jupiter, Sun, and Mercury, just showing how important it is. And in signs that are feminine, that traditionally have to do with food farming as well.
Mm,
So it could, it is speaking about our well-being and also our government, but it's also speaking about, yeah, trade,
Yeah. Yeah.
still being good. What we've got, Taurus is minerals and, things like that. It is slower, Saturn's ruling over the fourth house and squaring it a bit like just like the pre-ingress chart. But yeah, I really like it. I think it's a nice moon that's saying everything's still going okay in
Yeah,
that.
while you were talking about
Mm.
that too, I just had the little memory that the 12th house relates to like large animals, and that Mars there rules. And then you've got the sign of the bull. And I know there's been some
Mm.
talk about the importation of beef from North America, particularly the United States with the tariffs, which nobody's talking about at the moment because of the conflict in the Middle East. But like I think behind the scenes, perhaps a lot of work's being done on that because, cows are food for many people. Yeah, so maybe they will reach a deal on that if the United States are working towards the traceability that Australia requires for those biosecurity because we
Yeah, because in mundane, like you very much look at the signs and whether they're human or animal signs, to tell a lot. And so that would definitely feel that, with that Jupiter talking about looking, that Cancer signs talking about the people and food and caring for the people and their well-being. That's definitely feeling like there could be some kind of deal made around.
yeah,
But that's
yeah.
strange. Like, why would we need to import cattle?
Well, we don't, but the US, and it's not cattle itself, like, so it's not live animals, but America wants to
Just
be able to
beef.
send beef here, which they can, as long as it's traceable. We know, where it's been and what diseases it may have, basically. Like all beef here is like traceable from the time the animal's born to the time it's slaughtered and probably even sent to the shop. I don't know the details, but yeah, it just popped in, like, the Mars being kind of like, red meat, like the blood.
Yep.
And yeah, so yeah, it's funny the things that pop in as you're sort of looking at a chart and yeah, talking it through. So yeah, that moon does describe the parliament, and yes, Labor has a whopping parliamentary majority, which yeah, we kind of predicted in one of our previous videos, but yeah, I wasn't quite as bold as to say they'd win the massive number of seats that they did because it just didn't really seem conceivable. I think the prominence of the feminine planets as well show the standing of women in Parliament, like women's issues. God, I hate saying that because like yeah, but it's a thing. We live in a patriarchy, so yeah, women's issues do need to be talked about separately. And we've got a record number of women in Parliament, and the strength of that moon with aspecting Jupiter, ruling the sign of the 10th house, which describes the government, and even the opposition have put in a female leader. So women have a strong in this chart. Yeah, we've got a.
I think that's really interesting that you said that because I came across Anthony Albanese's chart. And have you ever looked at it?
Oh, he doesn't have a birth time, does he?
Well, they're giving it what I found in Solar Fire was they actually put in a chart of 12:10 p.m. for him,
Oh.
which I was wondering if that was his chart. So he's got Moon on the ascendant. Uh,
Ah,
yeah, Moon
he's
in
always
Gemini.
talking about his mum, isn't he? Like,
Yeah, he really
yeah.
is known about talking about his mum. And then I had a look at the solar return.
Mm.
for this year because I was interested. I was thinking, and he has a solar return that his rising sign has returned to the sign it was when he was born, so a Gemini rise,
Ah,
and Jupiter on the ascendant in
wow.
his solar return, and also conjunct that natal moon. So that really explains all the females, maybe, in
Yeah.
could that?
Yeah, I think so. Like I think he's quite inclusive for a man. Like, he's happy to, support women and have them on his team and like listen to them and because of his supportive relationship with his mother and all everything that she went through to support him and give him the opportunities that he needed to become prime minister. I mean, nobody would think. I mean, everybody knows his origin story, don't they? He'll tell it at the
Mm.
drop of a hat. But like he came from a poor background, and without those social policies, he never would have become prime minister of Australia and had the opportunities that he did and become the leader of the most number of women in parliament that history
Yeah,
in Australian
amazing.
history. Yeah, so I do think that this looks like a really functional parliament. If we're looking at this Cancer Ingress, because when did we have the election in May, didn't we? So I think this team is going to hit the ground running, and that
Mm.
tax reform that they speak of. And I think he wants to get universal childcares on his radar. Like these things are kind of, happening.
It looks like a very socially family oriented quarter, with the
Yeah.
changes being made. Yeah. And he's
Yeah.
very much a socialist in a lot of ways.
Bless him. The Sun conjunct Jupiter on the ninth house side, it's close to the MC, but I think that also kind of enlivens. Well, you've got the ninth house ruler in the 10th, so that idea of universities, the courts, international relations, and foreign visitors and immigration. It certainly doesn't look like immigration is going to slow down in this quarter, particularly student visas. I think Australia's education industry, do we say that, is, going as good as it's ever gone. We offer, I guess, a safe environment for many students. I know some students are targeted and, end up getting robbed and, ending up in nefarious situations. They are one of the sort of more vulnerable sectors of the population. But I think overall, Australia's got a good reputation for looking after young people. And perhaps that comes through with that Mercury in Cancer there. Um,
Yeah, so it's in reception with the moon too.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of like that home environment. Like, like people come here, they have a generally a good time. But yeah, the housing crisis that was quite prominent in that pre-Ingress lunation just continues. It's sorry, Capricorn rising chart, wasn't it? So it's just kind of like turned at a quarter.
Mm.
And yeah, it's housing's ruled by Saturn. And again, we have, Saturn with Neptune there. In Aries, plenty of enthusiasm, like, people going, we've got to do something. Like there is a sense of urgency about it, but the follow through action just looks quite ineffective here to me. Like it just, yeah,
Wonder
not
what the moon
happening.
is going to do. So Saturn is ruling over the housing. It is
Yep.
looking crappy. It's squaring that Jupiter, but the moon, where is it translating light? Like it's just
The
entered.
the moon comes from the sun, but it doesn't connect. Yeah, it goes from the sun to Mars.
Yeah, so it's that
Yeah.
it's next, and you could even say, I don't know, like I think that even though we've got, that Saturn square Jupiter, which is maybe, them being slowed down
Mm.
from doing all the great things they want to do.
Yeah,
Um, I still think that they're going to forge ahead with it because after that, after Mars, it hits Jupiter,
it
you know.
does. Well,
Mm.
something has to be done. Like it can't continue to go on. I just wonder with that moon, like in, it's going to continue to push through Taurus, that it seems to be related to this inheritance taxation issue that we talked about before. And I think perhaps that our relationship to savings and the tax breaks that property owners get may be the secret with Venus to, unlocking it. Like it just seems very tribal. Like, oh yeah, I'll pass my wealth on to my family, but like, fuck the rest of the population and anybody else that might, need a way to live. It's about, passing things on generationally within the one family. So if you don't have any wealth, like you can't get in and pass anything on to your kids and your family. Like, and people are just getting greedy. I think,
Totally.
yeah, it's kind of bad Taurus, and bad Taurus needs to be tamed for the collective good, which I think could happen with Jupiter in Cancer. Everybody, like there being enough for everybody.
Mm.
Australia is a big country. We don't all need, three Airbnb properties.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah,
So, like, I mean, I agree too. I think that, the Venus in Taurus is definitely the rich pushing for more and more and more. They don't want to give up. They're scared of giving up what they got. That's that Venus moving towards the eighth house.
yep,
Um, and Cancer is a sign associated, its ruler is the moon, which rules over the common people. And in mundane astrology, that is the people who don't generally have a lot of say of what goes on.
yeah.
And so I think that it's really heartening to see those signs up the top here of the chart.
Yeah, I think so as well. And just that very early degree moon there. It's in like, just half a degree inside Taurus. It's almost like, well, we need a new way of dealing with earth and wealth that's hopefully more equitable and more sustainable. I think, I did mention bad Taurus before with that can be covetous, but like the moon is good in Taurus. And in aspect to the sun and Jupiter, there is a sense of like generosity there, and I think shared wealth. Jupiter kind of, I think, lifts the material into the spiritual and the philosophical. So it's like, well, what are we actually doing here? Like, yeah, we want to ensure that our children are looked after, but we can think of our children in a very broad way, as like, all the younger generation, not just the ones that we're, related to by blood. Like it's more open than that. And there's, aspiration and ambition there for everybody as a collective. If I put on my rose-colored glasses.
Well, I'll just take them back off, but I'm only joking. There's, I mean, there's still that Saturn,
Yeah,
and so it is tempering it.
it is.
Um, but it is, apart from the from the ascendant, the 10th house is the most powerful place. So yeah, and it is moving away from Saturn as well. And it is kind of um so it is breaking free from that. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting
Well,
to see what the next ingress shows.
indeed. And we don't have a sneak peek of that. So you'll all just have to come back at the Libra Ingress. We just have to keep going with these, Sam. We do. Yeah, we'll check back and see how we've gone. And yeah, but I think there's some signs of positive change here, and new beginnings this quarter, and we have lofty goals and good reasons to pursue them. It's just a matter of corralling all the monkeys and all moving in the same direction.
Thanks, Kim.
No worries. Thanks heaps for popping on.